In our last exploration into the world of Edgar Cayce's visions about cats, we uncovered a prophecy that left many wondering whether these seemingly ordinary companions have been quietly shaping our lives in ways we could not yet understand. That chapter felt complete at the time, yet in truth, it was only the opening scene of a much larger investigation. Since then, new information has surfaced, and these discoveries are not the scattered whispers of folklore or superstition, but a confluence of modern research, mystics' testimonies, and real-life events that appear to echo Cayce's words with uncanny precision. Cayce once described cats as guardians of a subtle energy that humans seldom perceive, protectors of thresholds both physical and unseen. In one of his lesser-known readings, he spoke of the silent watchers, who stand where the veil between worlds is thinnest, their presence said to harmonize the energies of the spaces they inhabit. At the time, such language seemed steeped in esoteric symbolism, but through the years, a pattern has begun to emerge, and it is as though the prophecy is being traced out before us in real time. Consider a recent case from Vancouver, where a woman recovering from a severe back injury reported that her cat would rest beside her lower spine every evening without fail. The oddity was not the companionship, but the measurable improvement in her healing rate, confirmed by her physiotherapist, which mirrored findings from new studies showing that the low-frequency vibrations of a cat's purr can aid in bone and tissue regeneration. Scientists in California have been investigating this phenomenon, noting that these vibrations fall within the same frequency range used in therapeutic ultrasound treatments, a fact that makes Cayce's description of cats as natural healers far more plausible than skeptics once believed. In Massachusetts, a Reiki practitioner spoke of her cat leaping onto the chest of a client during a healing session, then refusing to move until the session was over. The client later revealed she had been experiencing palpitations all week, yet that night her heart rhythm felt calm for the first time in days. The practitioner, who had read Cayce's work, believed the cat was instinctively aligning the client's energy field. Meanwhile, social media has become an unexpected archive of modern cat mysteries. Viral videos show cats waking their owners seconds before smoke alarms go off, meowing insistently until they are led away from windows just before strong winds topple a tree, or sitting unblinking at spots in the home, where later it is discovered electrical wiring had been damaged and was leaking dangerous currents. Such events may seem like coincidence to the casual observer, yet when placed alongside the intricate web of Cayce's visions, they take on a far deeper significance. These accounts begin to form a living map, one where the points of connection are too numerous and too consistent to ignore. It is not just that cats are present during moments of crisis or transformation. It is the way they seem to anticipate them, positioning themselves like sentinels long before the human mind becomes aware that something is about to shift. This matches the rhythm of Cayce's descriptions, where he portrayed cats as creatures attuned to changes in the energetic atmosphere, almost as though they could taste the currents of the unseen world in the same way we sense the faintest shift in weather. A family in Manchester, England, recounted how their rescue cat, only months after settling in, began sleeping exclusively on the landing of their staircase. It seemed peculiar at first, but it was later revealed that a slow leak in the central heating pipe ran directly beneath that spot, one that could have caused serious water damage and mold had it gone unnoticed. A plumber fixing the problem remarked that it was strange for the animal to have chosen that location so consistently. When the family reflected on Cayce's work, they began to see the behavior less as an odd quirk and more as an intentional act of quiet guardianship. The emerging evidence is not confined to private anecdotes. Veterinary behaviorists in the United States have documented a growing number of reports in which cats appear to detect health issues before they become obvious, not only in their human companions, but also in other animals. In one documented case from Colorado, a cat began persistently sniffing the left side of its owner's face, to the point where it interrupted sleep. Days later, a medical examination revealed a developing sinus infection and early-stage inflammation in the jaw. The more these stories surface, the more they resemble pieces of a prophecy that is not static, but unfolding. If Cayce was correct in saying that animals, and cats in particular, are part of the human spiritual journey, then their role is not symbolic alone, but deeply practical. They may be intervening in ways that blend the mystical with the measurable, stepping into moments where human vulnerability is greatest and leaving behind no trace except the change they have wrought. One of the most striking modern parallels to Cayce's vision came from a neurologist in Toronto who shared the case of a patient whose cat began waking her in the middle of the night by pawing at her temple. At first, she thought it was an annoying habit, until one morning she woke to a severe headache and sought immediate help, only to discover a small but dangerous blood clot in her brain. The neurologist, though careful not to make mystical claims, admitted that the pattern of behavior was unusual enough to be worth noting, particularly because it stopped completely after the patient's recovery. In each of these modern cases, there is a common thread, a quiet precision in timing and intent that feels less like coincidence and more like an unseen pact between species. Cayce hinted at such an arrangement in reading 2542-1, where he referred to certain animals as companions to the soul, noting that their service was not bound by human understanding, but by an older cosmic agreement. Cats, he said, are watchers of the thresholds, their awareness extending beyond the limits of sight or sound. In today's world, where the pace of life often drowns out intuition, perhaps it is the cat that stands as the last line of defense against dangers we cannot name until they arrive. Consider the viral video from Oregon earlier this year, where home security footage captured a cat pacing frantically near the baby's crib moments before a small electrical fire broke out in the adjacent room. The parents, alerted by the noise, rushed in and extinguished the flame before it spread. News outlets reported it as a lucky escape, but to those familiar with Cayce's words, it reads as an echo of his claim that animals are often moved by spiritual influences to act when human life is at stake. It is tempting to dismiss these events as rare or unrepeatable, yet the pattern emerges most clearly when stories are collected over time and across places. A tech worker in Seattle described how her cat began refusing to enter her home office, even meowing at the door until she left. Days later, she discovered a carbon monoxide leak from an old heater in that room. A retiree in Dublin told of his cat sitting on his chest night after night until he scheduled a long overdue heart checkup, which revealed early signs of arrhythmia. What makes these accounts compelling is not merely the life-saving element, but the depth of emotional resonance they carry. Those who have lived through such moments often speak of an unshakable bond formed in the aftermath, a sense that the cat is not merely a pet, but a partner in navigating the unseen hazards of existence. Cayce's vision may have sounded poetic in the early 20th century, yet in the age of viral connectivity and medical precision, its truth seems to be weaving itself into both spiritual testimony and scientific curiosity. Recent advances in animal cognition research have shown that cats can detect minute shifts in human pheromones, heart rate, and even subtle vibrations from muscle tension. While science may attribute these abilities to evolutionary adaptations for survival, it does not negate the possibility that such sensitivity can overlap with what Cayce called the higher attunement of the soul. In this way, modern biology and ancient prophecy are not in conflict, but rather speaking two dialects of the same language. The one charts the mechanism, the other the meaning. If this is correct, then the question is no longer whether Cayce's prophecy is real, but how much of it we have yet to witness. What we have yet to witness may already be in motion, unfolding quietly in living rooms, kitchens, and quiet backyards, noticed only by those willing to pause and observe. Cayce's prophecy about cats was not framed as a single moment of revelation, but as a gradual awakening, a shift in the human-animal relationship that would grow more evident with time. He spoke of a period when the spiritual roles of animals would become widely acknowledged, not through grand announcements, but through countless personal experiences shared and compared, until the idea moved from the realm of mysticism into accepted truth. We are beginning to see that cultural shift now. In cities across North America and Europe, pet owners increasingly describe their cats as healers or guardians, rather than simply pets. Online communities have sprung up where people trade stories about the uncanny awareness of their feline companions. These accounts span from the mundane to the extraordinary. A woman in Toronto who credits her cat with warning her of a gas leak. A man in Copenhagen whose cat began sitting beside him during late-night panic attacks until he sought therapy. A family in Sydney whose cat started sleeping on their daughter's bed every night after she experienced a traumatic event, providing comfort that no human words could match. Such stories often go viral, not only because they are heartwarming, but because they touch something deep within the collective psyche. They resonate with the human longing to believe that connection extends beyond speech and intellect, that there is a current of mutual care flowing between us and the animals we live alongside. In Cayce's time, this was a sentiment shared quietly, often in the language of faith. Today it is amplified through digital storytelling, and its reach has become global. Ethologists now speak of empathic resonance in companion animals, describing how they mirror human emotional states in ways that defy traditional explanations. Veterinary neurologists are studying the effects of feline companionship on patients with degenerative brain conditions, noting not just physical improvements, but an overall elevation in mood and resilience. While these studies rarely reference Cayce directly, their findings feel like footnotes to a vision set down a century ago. There is also the peculiar alignment between the rise in this awareness and the increasing stresses of modern life. Cayce suggested that as humanity faced greater turmoil, emotional, environmental, and spiritual, the role of certain animals would become more pronounced, serving as stabilizing forces amid chaos. For many, the past decade has felt precisely like that kind of threshold moment, with uncertainty pressing in from all sides. It is perhaps no coincidence that in these years, the cultural love for cats has surged to unprecedented levels, not just in ownership, but in symbolic representation across art, media, and social conversation. In social media spaces that thrive on trends and quick distractions, cats have somehow transcended the role of fleeting entertainment to become enduring symbols of presence and perception. Memes may show their mischievous side, but woven into the humor is an almost subconscious acknowledgement of their intelligence and their awareness of things we cannot see. People often post about their cats staring at blank walls, tracking invisible movements in the air, or positioning themselves in specific spots as if to guard or observe. One particularly striking account comes from a retired pilot in Oregon who had never given much thought to mysticism. He tells of a night when his cat, normally quiet and reserved, began pacing and yowling outside his bedroom door with such urgency that he got up to investigate. As he stepped into the hallway, he noticed the faint smell of smoke. Moments later, he discovered that an electrical outlet in his living room was overheating, the plastic beginning to blacken. He swears that without his cat's intervention, he might have slept through the warning signs until it was too late. Stories like these might once have been regarded as coincidences, but when heard alongside thousands of others, they begin to form patterns that cannot be ignored. Cayce's readings frequently hinted at animals as sentinels, beings who interact with subtle energies that remain inaccessible to most humans. In one obscure session, numbered 2546-3, he spoke of those who dwell close to man, who yet are of a realm attuned to the forces that heal and warn, and who may act when the soul of man is not yet awake to its own danger. While he did not name cats specifically in that moment, many scholars of his work believe this was an indirect reference to them. Modern mystics often interpret these feline behaviors as a form of energetic shielding. They suggest that when a cat chooses to sit beside you, curl up on your lap, or even sleep at the foot of your bed, it may be actively harmonizing the energy in your personal field. Some go further, claiming that cats can intercept and transmute negative influences, whether those influences originate from within your own emotional state or from the environment around you. Skeptical listeners may find these ideas abstract, yet the personal testimonies that pour into forums and discussion groups speak to an overwhelming emotional truth. When placed against the backdrop of Cayce's prophecy, these patterns take on new weight. They suggest that what might appear to be ordinary companionship could in fact be an ancient form of guardianship, whether through instinct learned behavior, or a deeper spiritual function, cats are showing up in moments of need with a consistency that demands our attention. As the threads of this mystery weave together, it becomes harder to dismiss the possibility that we are living in the very period Cayce foresaw, when the hidden capacities of animals would rise to prominence in human awareness. The fact that so many modern encounters mirror his descriptions of spiritual guardianship is not something that can be explained away as mere chance. For centuries, cultures have whispered of cats as intermediaries between the seen and unseen, from the sacred temples of Egypt to the quiet folklore of rural Europe. And now these whispers seem to echo in our own living rooms. Consider how this understanding might change the way we live alongside them. A family in Toronto who adopted a rescue cat noticed that whenever they argued, the cat would insert itself physically between them, sitting with its back to one person and its gaze fixed firmly on the other. They began to realize that these interventions often diffused the tension, sometimes ending disagreements altogether. The family came to believe that the cat was not simply reacting to noise or body language, but actively working to restore harmony. In the past, such a notion might have been laughed off, but in light of Cayce's vision and the mounting testimonies from around the world, it becomes part of a broader, intriguing pattern. Even science, cautious in its language, is slowly inching toward acknowledging the depth of animal perception. Research into the human-animal bond continues to reveal how cats can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, and even alter brainwave patterns in their companions. Though researchers often stop short of attributing this to spiritual causes, they cannot ignore the measurable physiological effects that suggest a deeper form of connection. For those familiar with Cayce's teachings, these findings feel less like new discoveries and more like rediscoveries of truths that were known in ancient times. If we take these signs seriously, then Cayce's prophecy is not simply a quaint piece of psychic history. It becomes a living, unfolding reality that invites us to look more closely at the creatures we share our lives with. Cats may be far more than pets, far more than symbols. They may be active participants in a cosmic arrangement we are only beginning to understand. Their quiet presence, their sudden burst of instinct, their unwavering gaze into corners where nothing seems to be, all of these could be clues left for those who are willing to see. Perhaps the most profound takeaway from these new clues is the reminder that the world is layered with mysteries, and that the beings we think we know best might still have roles to play in the unseen architecture of life. Cayce's cat mystery is far from closed. If anything, the investigation is just beginning, and as more evidence surfaces, the case for these silent, watchful guardians only grows stronger. The question now is not whether the prophecy is true, but how much of it we are ready to witness with open eyes and open hearts.